Camera rolling. Mine
do one
just.
of these?
She can just give us a clap.
Oh, will you just clap for us?
Okay.
Perfect. Cool. So I actually want to start by having you tell me, what is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice?
Okay, so the basic story is, it's a Greek myth, and Orpheus is the son of a muse, and he's a super rock star musician, and he's gorgeous, and the ladies love him, and everyone loves him because of his music. He falls in love with Eurydice, and they get married, like almost right off the bat, because they're just so in love. And on their wedding night, Eurydice gets bitten by a snake, and she dies, like right on their wedding night. So Orpheus is so full of grief, and he's mourning, and he's so sad that he's like, I have no other choice but to go and get her. So he journeys to the underworld, and he crosses the river Styx, and he begs Persephone and Hades to let him take her back with him to the land of the living. And he even plays his music to like convince him, right? And Persephone like cries like one little tear, and she's like, okay, yes. And Hades is like, okay, you can take her, but she has to follow behind you all the way back, and you can't turn and look at her. If you do, she'll be gone. And he's like, yeah, okay, I got this. And they set out on their journey back to the land of the living, and he just can't stand it because he can't hear her, he can't feel her, can't see her shadow. And at the precipice, right at the edge of stepping back into the land of the living, he can't stand it anymore, and he turns to look. So there we go, round two of having lost Eurydice. And he goes back to the land of the living, and he's again consumed with grief, and lots of different versions of the story go lots of different ways, except for he definitely dies. Some of the versions of the story are like he's so engulfed in his own grief and sorrow that the animals of the forest are like putting him out of his misery, and they just kind of tear him to shreds, and that's the end of him. Meanwhile, other versions of the story sound more like him coming back to the land of the living and still expressing his sorrow and his grief, and the ladies that he had been so enamored with and so mixed up with before Eurydice are so tired of hearing about his love for Eurydice and having lost her again that they rip him to shreds and kind of make the end of him. So there are a lot of different, twists on the end of that story. But the point being, he ends up in the underworld where he was trying to go before anyways. So he ends up in the same spot as her. I don't know what that really means in terms of their relationship, but yeah.
So that's just like a beautifully heartbreaking,
I know!
sad story. What is its significance to you, or why did you choose it?
Okay, so one, it's important that it's a tragedy. My sister Christina Knight and I are collaborating and been working on this piece together for about 3.5, 4 years now. And initially this piece, it wasn't based on the myth. We were really diving into some material that had to do with our upbringing and our childhood, some shared experiences that had to do with trauma and loss. Our father passed away at the age of 51, and that's when we were junior and senior in high school, and it was a pretty traumatic event for us. And fast forward quite a few years, we kind of coming back into the same arena of like, okay, now I think we're ready to deal with this in a different way. So we were kind of already set with this sense of tragedy, and we kept finding ourselves hitting up against neither one of us is interested in like dance therapy like that, right? We were interested in telling a story. We were interested in diving into our own issues, but also having a story or a trajectory in the work that served other purposes than just making us feel better about what happened. That didn't really strike either one of us as the route for us. So fast forward a few months, and then a few years later, my sister and I are both still kind of back and forth on this, and she comes to me with I had a dream, and she goes into telling me about the dream, and wherein the city of the dead looks like, you know, the subway or Brooklyn, then we started talking about the underworld, and realizing that there was a larger theme coming out of what we were talking about, and the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice just kind of fell into our laps as like, wow, this is actually quite a perfect story, because both of us were dealing with really significant long-term relationship issues. She was at the end of one very significant relationship, and I had been married for about 13, 14 years at that point, and was, you know, dealing with some very, you know, big transitions in that as well. And you know, so again, it was about us, but because we had this myth that is, you know, very, very old and has been told many, many times in various ways and shapes and forms, it was something that we could use as a scaffolding to hold on our experiences and our just explorations in creating something that was not just about us, but included other voices as well, and kind of its inherent capacity, right? It's, you know, a myth is something that we can dive into over and over and over again, and from lots of different angles. And so, yeah, so it was a, you know, a combination of dreams and studying, being in academics, and, you know, like a lot of different things kind of gelling into one, like, oh, aha, this is perfect.
That's really cool. So you went to Duke.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know you wanted to study dance? Like,
the short answer is yes. I've been dancing since I was a kid, and it's always been that thing that I got to come back to, and I did it, you know, all the way through elementary and middle and high school. My father passed at the end of high school, and so I didn't even know what to do with that. It was, you know, a lot of grieving and being young, and also being at that place where I had to choose college, and I had thought I wanted to go away, but after that happened, I was like, no, I gotta stay close to home. And I applied to Duke, kind of like on the low, because, you know, I mean, I come from, you know, Pittsburgh, which is rural, you know, like small school. I really didn't think that I had it in me to actually get to make that happen. So I applied to all my other schools first. You know, I applied to UNCG, which is like, I was like, I know I can do that. You know, I know I can do that, and they have a great dance program. And but then, so yeah, it was like kind of secret. Like I actually didn't tell anybody except for like my mom and my sister that I was applying there, and I got in. And lo and behold, Duke was, you know, able to support me and make it feasible for me to come to one of the top schools in the country, and not be, you know, overwhelmed with debt. Like UNC, it was going to cost me more to go to UNCG, a state school, over 4 years than it was going to cost me to go to Duke. And of course, I mean, it's Duke, so I was like, yes, of course I am. But like that made it even sweeter and made me feel really supported. But when I got here, I had just gotten married. I got married at 18, so I was very, very young. It was my high school sweetheart. I'd been with him for 3.5 years, and I mean, definitely my dad passing had something to do with the kind of push to go through with that. So I had just gotten married after I graduated from high school, and then I started at Duke, and dance was not at the forefront. Like I couldn't really fit a lot of it into my schedule, and I just was like, well, I know I want to help kids, and I know I want to work with people like one-on-one or hands-on and be active with them. But I thought that looked more like sociology. I thought that looked more like I don't know, like something that wasn't dance related. It was again one of those pieces of me that was like, I don't really know that I could do that. I don't know that I have that in me, you know, especially not being a professional dancer. I always knew I wanted to dance, and I thought, well, maybe it would be teaching, or maybe that would be, I don't know, but never like performing in a company or anything like that. So the first year or so at Duke, I was, oh gosh, you know, I wasn't really part of the freshman class, like in the same way that almost every other freshman is. I didn't live on campus. I lived right off campus, and I was in a focus group. So, you know, I had like my dorm that I was affiliated with and a group of people that I saw regularly. But it was a different experience for me. Yeah, it wasn't until I was a junior or a sophomore, and at the end of my sophomore year, having to declare my major, and also butting up against statistics, and I was like, oh, hell no. I was like, no, this isn't for me. This isn't what I want. My heart hates this. My brain hates this. I feel like nothing is worthwhile with this program. Like I wasn't getting anything out of it. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, program 2, I could dance. And then I also, well, to back up, that's not true. That wasn't what came first. What came first was me studying. I was doing ballet, like, you know, once or twice a week, one class. And I ended up missing a lot because I was sick. I had some terrible allergies and tonsil issues, like my freshman and sophomore years. And so I was doing a lot of makeup classes. And I took a makeup class with Clay Taliaferro, and he is now Professor Emeritus. You know, he doesn't teach here right anymore. But I took his modern class, and I was like loving it. And he really confronted me with this, like, why aren't you dancing? Like, that's the actual question he asked me. Why aren't you dancing? And I think he had a pretty deep understanding about what was happening with me. Like, you know, not knowing me personally, but seeing that, like, the moment I got on the dance floor and I was moving through space and really, you know, feeling and being present and all those things